or something too. So I think,
Yeah.
I think at least we can do this. We have all learned to uh, improvise in this fashion,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is,
And
and
this,
actually, to tell you the truth, we've gotten people who participate who would not have been able to otherwise.
right.
Okay, we are live on YouTube,
Okay.
just so you know.
All righty.
And just a couple more minutes and we will get started with the Zoom itself.
Okay.
So
Wonderful.
Very good.
Yeah.
We have beautiful weather here too, Eric. I mean, it has been a beautiful day after those storms went through. We have had a spectacular day today.
I tell you, I guess it just had to blow through and then
Yeah.
give us something nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great to hear. I know my son, well, they're taking off this week for soccer for the Easter weekend, but that's one of our highlights is getting to go practice during the week for soccer, and they have certainly had to kind of miss out a little bit because
Right.
of
Oh yeah. Yeah. The
oh,
past couple of days have been
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
And honestly, the rain has been, we've had the rain, but we've had like crazy wind. I mean, just incredible wind.
Right. Gosh.
It's been
Yeah.
wild. It has been wild.
Yeah. I was just praying for no tornadoes and that were too damaging. That seems to
Right.
be the tough one to kind of look out for. But
Right.
yeah. So the tour of homes is coming up soon, though, right? That's what
Yep.
I.
It's going to be
3 weeks.
3 weeks exactly. A little over
Wow.
3 weeks. Mother's Day weekend.
Oh,
So
cool. Okay.
yeah. So if you
Sounds-
guys are in town, you should try to swing by. We're going to be in Governor's Mansion, Historic District, Ann's neighborhood, and we have some really lovely houses on tour this year. So we are very excited, and we're keeping our fingers crossed for good weather too, of course.
Right. Right. No doubt.
Yeah, because it really makes the weekend if the weather's pretty. Last year, well, we skipped 2020, but last year we did Petaway in October, and it was kind of rainy that Saturday, but it cleared up that night, and then Sunday was just beautiful. It was just
Yeah.
lovely.
Yeah, it's always good to have some nice weather, especially for moving around outside.
Oh, yes. When you want to get people on the street. Yes, exactly.
No doubt.
Exactly.
All right, about one more minute.
Okay.
I've got, looks like 3 people on YouTube right now too.
Oh, okay, great. So for those of you who have jumped on already, we will be getting started in just a minute, literally in a minute at 6 o'clock. We're just getting ourselves lined up. So thanks for jumping on.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to hit the start webinar button.
All right.
And there we go.
All right, everybody, we're about to get started for our April preservation conversation. It's almost 6 o'clock, and Shelley has queued up YouTube. All right, let's get going. Good evening. Thank you all for joining us tonight for our April preservation conversation, Decorative Finishes and Interiors by Eric Phippen of Finality Design. I'm Patricia Blick, and the Executive Director of the QQA, and I'm joined by Shelley Stormo, our Membership and Events Coordinator. I would like to thank our donors as well as our corporate and individual members. We're able to hold our educational programs with your support. You can find a list of our corporate members on our website at quapaw.com. If you are not a member of the QQA and you believe in our mission, preserving Greater Little Rock's historic places, we invite you to join and support the work that we do. Please go to quapaw.com to join for as little as $35 a year, or you can make a donation at quapaw.com. Before I introduce our speaker, I just wanted to let you know we'll be taking your questions at the end of the talk. Please type your questions and comments into the chat section of Zoom or the comment section of YouTube. On to tonight's preservation conversation. I am very pleased to introduce tonight's speaker, Eric Phippen. Eric Phippen is the owner-operator of Finality Design Incorporated out of North Little Rock. They provide personalized finishes and customized original art. Eric has lived in Central Arkansas for 43 years. He has been involved in local art for the majority of those years and has worked professionally for 20 of them. Eric is not only an artist, but a husband of 17 years, father of 3, and a grandfather, and strives to be a great part of their lives as much as possible. He tries to keep an open mind and look for new experiences that will enrich his life. Eric has had the opportunity to work on many historic projects, some small and some more involved in his career. One recent project was the historic Marshall House located on Arch Street in Little Rock, the home of Anne and Jim Bryan, where he was contracted to recreate a missing part of history. Eric is interested in just about anything that requires using his mind, body, especially his hands, and time, and his goal as a business owner is to provide a reliable and consistent product to his clients. He employs the use of multimedia in order to create a visual product for them. The project is complete when he gets an emotional response to the piece. The hope, of course, is a state of joy, amazement, and love. I believe these are words of an artist. I have seen the work that Eric has done at the Marshall House and would agree that it is remarkable, awe-inspiring, and brings great joy. Join me in welcoming Eric Phippen of Finality Design.
Hello. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much, Patricia. Yes. Hello. My name is Eric Phippen. And I'd like to just start by thanking Quapaw Quarter Association for having me as a guest and having me as a speaker. And also like to thank Patricia and Shelley for hosting this webinar. It's really an honor to be recognized as an asset in the pursuit of preserving history. I'll begin tonight talking a little bit about what I do and what Finality Design provides. Finality is a company that was created in order to serve the needs of its clients by using some creative ideas, some innovative processes, some multimedia applications, several different types of techniques, and a bit of elbow grease, all in order to reach a final product. Each product at Finality is contracted and they are all quite unique. So I do believe I was invited to this forum because of the work that I recently completed at the historic Marshall House on Arch Street in Little Rock. I was contracted by Justin Elbert on behalf of the Bryans to see if I could help out. So I'll be covering a little bit more on this project a little later in this presentation. This evening, I'm going to discuss some of the materials I work with, some of the techniques I use, my workspace, and how I approach a project. Ultimately, at the conclusion of this presentation, I hope one can embrace the relevance of art in any project. So, without further ado, I've prepared a PowerPoint to assist me in this presentation, and I'm going to attempt to pull it up right now. Give me just one moment, please. There we go. Just a moment, sorry. All right. Do you have it pulled up? All right. So
yeah, it looks good. It looks good, Eric.
Great. Okay. Good deal. It's on. All right. So Finality Design is my company. This is our logo that we use, and personally designed by me. I'm really happy of it. Again, my name is Eric Phippen, contract artist and owner operator of Finality Design. Finality Design has a studio located in North Little Rock on East Washington Avenue. There's some of our information, contact information there, phone number and email address. And you can like us on Facebook, and we're on Instagram as well. All right, so about Finality Design, Inc. We really just want to try to make a difference in people's lives by using some of the skills and experiences acquired over a lot of years in the field of visual arts. Providing a custom finish is really ultimately the difference that maintains the success of this business. So some of the materials and the media that I work with include plaster. So various types of plasters include Venetian plaster, gypsum or drywall, mud, concretes, there are different types of concretes and cements that I work with, plaster of Paris, Bondo, which is more of an epoxy kind of plastering agent. I work with mortar and thin sets. Also get to work with wood. A lot of it's finishing of wood, but also I get to work with wood for installations through construction and use them for carving. Certainly use paints and every paint that you can imagine. So every type of acrylic and oil-based paints, epoxies, latexes, and stains. And then, mixed media, some combination of both or any of these above can go into a project. So, really try to stay open and try to come up with the best visual outcome that we can for these projects by using some of these materials and media. Some of the techniques that I use and some of the specialties are painting and, glazes. So that, painting is, layers, and glazes are layers to try to create a rich image. I work on canvas, do trompe l'oeil painting and graining, some strié, I do mural work, stenciling, sculpting, carving. I do some signage work, commercial installations, and of course some repair work and faux finishing. All right, and so, these projects, being that there's always something unique about them, whether it's just the client or whether it's, just nobody knows what to do and we just need to figure out something to do to kind of help this project along. I try to approach every project by really just listening to the client's needs and their desires or their concerns that they might have about the project to start with. And obviously, I'll try to keep an open mind about how we're going to, take care of this project. So I, try to look at the location. There are a lot of different projects that are required to be on location. Some projects I can work on at my studio, whether it's furniture or a piece of art. But on location projects require a different set of approach and how to work it. So next thing I look at is are there any time constraints? Is there a schedule in place? Do we need it done now? Do we need it done later? Or do we have any budget constraints? I mean, are we working within just a tight budget, or is it unlimited? Which I love those, right? Who wouldn't? And then, are there any inspirations? A lot of times our clients or my clients will come to me with something that they've seen or they just have in their mind that they really want something special there. So trying to find out if, there are any inspirations for this project. Sometimes it is just something needs to happen. Something's broken and needs to be fixed, or something needs to go away that is an eyesore, or we just really want something special for a particular location. So, pictures sometimes come up, examples, if there's something we can go look at that the client really likes, and then we can kind of work off of that. It's kind of funny. Some of the clients will come to me and they go and they show me a picture of something that they like, that they found on whatever, Pinterest or whatever. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, well, I did that. So it's a lot of fun sometimes to go, okay, I think we're on the right track. We're connected now. And so hopefully we can provide something that you're really going to enjoy. And then, once we look at the project, we really try to just identify a strategy on how to approach or how to get started on it. And so by using some of those media that were listed earlier and some of the techniques, I usually try to just come up with a strategy on how to tackle this project. Some of them are tougher than others, and but ultimately once that strategy is formed, I want to communicate that with the client. So the client is updated. Some of the clients are really interested in the process and want to know every product, which is great and which is fine, and want to know the steps and want to be very involved in these projects. And I think that's wonderful when they do. I think it really gives them a sense of ownership and a partnership within the project, which is a lot of fun. I think it makes a difference sometimes for people to feel like they had a say and a piece in each of these projects. But also some clients are like, hey, listen, just do what you do, and we trust you, which is a lot. It's flattering, but those sometimes are the tougher projects because we got to pull some things out of thin air or sometimes, and that's kind of tough to do. But ultimately, either way, I'm trying to communicate the process one way or the other, and try to build some rapport and some comfort with any client that I work with. Of course, I work with a lot of different clients. Some of them are builders, some of them are architects. Work with a lot of designers on projects. They pull me in for various things, and then sometimes just the owner themselves just call and they have something special or a need that they feel like maybe we can help with. And generally speaking, most of the projects we get involved with, if not all, I guess, really are a success. So very thankful for all the support that we have, and hopefully, we'll continue doing this for as many years as they'll allow us to. So, all right. So I mentioned, moving on here, mentioned the Marshall House. We mentioned it in the intro. This is a historic house built in 1908. It's on 2009 South Arch Street in Little Rock. So this Marshall House, again, it was a project that was contracted. I have a friend, which I think has been recognized for his work on historic houses. He does remodels and construction. His name is Justin Elbert. I've known him for several years, and he knows what I do. And so when faced with some of these concerns and issues that they had trying to complete this remodel, he thought of me. So I was very thankful for him to give me a call and at least see if I could, consult or even do the project, and just throw my hat in there and see what happens. And so when we met at the Marshall House, I was to say the least, kind of like, what did I get myself into here? Because it was pretty, right off the bat, I thought, oh, this is going to be fairly challenging to get this project completed. So I am going to start. I did a couple of different projects at the Marshall House. I'm going to start with one of them, and then I'll move on to the more difficult one. But as you know, I mentioned earlier, I work with a lot of different materials. Venetian plaster is one of those materials. I think it's a ageless kind of finish. I mean, it can be used in all types of applications to create a wonderful effect. Venetian plaster is one of those products that it's based in the old days. They would take marble dust or lime dust and just basically emulsify it with water and spread it on the walls, and then you could what we call burnish it to make it shine. So you polish it using various tools. I use my actual trowel to do it, and with a lot of pressure and some movement and a little heat generated, you can get those walls or ceilings to shine pretty well. So I've had some images of the entry room off of in the Marshall House here. Let me go to it. Okay, so yeah, here we go. So on the ceiling there is an example of Venetian plaster that we did. So the ceiling, had to have some repair work, and it was, I think, initially just painted gold, which was nice, but it was showing some age. And then, of course, with the repair work, it wasn't salvageable as it was. So Justin and his crew, they leveled out the roof the best they could, or the ceiling the best they could, to prepare it for a fine finish, for something nice. So was very lucky to have Ann there. We went through a couple different ideas. I did bring gold, and we tried some gold on the ceiling. But in this particular room, and a lot of historical houses, they don't have a center chandelier, so lighting is pretty tough sometimes. And we really wanted to take advantage of the natural light that was coming through the doorway there, and also just accent the beautiful crystal and lead work on the door as well. So the thought in my head was, wow, I have a product, Venetian plaster, that really reflects light well when it's polished, and so it gives this effect of more openness when the light hits it, and just the room feels a little bit bigger. It's fun. It's a fun finish for me as far as just the visual aspect of it. It's probably one of the most difficult finishes we do because of the physical intensity. Applying this plaster, there's several layers, and then the polishing part is pretty difficult. So not only mentally but physically challenging type of application with this Venetian plaster. But as you can see, I think it turned out pretty well. I think it's one of those finishes that you're like, wow, this is great. You get to see it's got a lot of depth, and you get to kind of see that light reflecting. And it's a wonderful finish to have on a ceiling or walls. And so really appreciate the opportunity to do that. So, all right, so moving on. And so unfortunately, I'm kind of limited on some of my images because I did unfortunately lose some of these images. So I'm going to start with this image. And this is what I was talking about earlier. So at the Marshall House, there is this wall that has a 7-panel silk screened kind of wallpaper mural that was I don't know if it was the original to when the house was built, in 1908, but it's very old and part of the house at this stage. But it had a lot of, already had some, as you can see, some cracks throughout the background and just throughout the walls. And then some of it was peeling, some of it was stained. But it was a wonderful scene, and it just really, I think Anne just really wanted to try to preserve it if we could, or at least some of it. And to approach something like this, I think Anne and Justin went through a couple different lines of attack, of trying to just scan a portion of it and then maybe recreate it on paper or print it. But it really seemed to be just like, oh man, this is, it doesn't seem really, possible really to kind of get this done through some of the technologies that we have today. And so whenever I got to the job site, I thought, well, I think the only thing I'm going to be able to do is just recreate it by hand painting a new scene for them using the color scheme and the layers that was used, and obviously the style of painting that we have in this mural. But to start with, I couldn't just start painting on that, which was a doorway. Okay, so I'll back up a little bit. So at some point in time, a big hole was cut out of this wall, including part of that mural, to install a doorway that was not original to the original floor plan for this home, and really wanted to, get this house back to its original floor plan. And so that's why this opening was ultimately closed in to get back to the original floor plan of the home. So, hey, either we try to save this mural, or we just, we just take it down, or whatever, just paint over it. So coming into it, I thought, well, this is pretty rough. So there's going to be some work right out of the chute, just construction wise, to try to make this a surface that we can work with. And then, ultimately looking at the colors and studying the piece, I think I came up with 11 different colors in this piece. And of course, each color was layered in at a certain time in that piece as well, or certain consecutively in certain ways. So I had to kind of really had to study this piece for a while, stare at it to try to figure out which color went first, or and which color went second. And then of course, really we're having to I had to just kind of custom blend a lot of these colors right on site. I did my best to try to match the colors with pre-mixed colors that you could buy through, I do commercial paints on this one. I wanted to make sure we had some really good paints to use. So I tried to use some of the palettes that were available to me. They were close, but not an exact match. So at that point, I, on site, started to blend some of the colors to try to get the closest match we could for these 11 different colors. I'm going to move forward to the next one. So, okay, so we got to this point here where the wall was prepped nicely and smoothed out, so we don't have those large, seams and chips anymore. I went in and filled some of the cracks that were very visible throughout the entire piece. Now, mind you, this is just a section of this mural. This is I think a 13-foot long, 14-foot long mural. So this is about 4 feet of that. So yeah, found a good color that worked for the background to start with, and started at that stage. I really wanted to identify my kind of perspective line there. So looking at the river, this is the river scene, decided, okay, let's continue kind of this ripple across there to kind of, at least pull these two sides of the mural together somehow. And so that was the beginning, first step there, the background, and then adding that blue ripple to kind of give me some perspective and give us kind of a landscape line there to something to work off of. All right, and as you can see up there on the walls there, that was some of the cracks that had to be filled. Now I think they were still drying at that stage, so you can kind of see them there and see how many there were. This is almost the complete image of the mural, which is pretty cool. And as you can see, went ahead and started adding the clouds. And again, just trying to study what was already there and the style of painting that this was in. And then again, some of the custom colors there as well mixed up. So again, just kind of layering these colors on there in a way that looked like it was done originally. And moving on. All right, so here's a couple of pictures side by side. This is getting pretty close to being completed on the right, but on the left there, okay, and kind of going back, so to this actual scene, we could not determine what was in this missing part of this mural. We knew, we had a roundabout idea of when it was put up. We had some similar examples, but unfortunately, we could not specifically determine exactly what was in this missing part of history. So this is where some of that kind of creative ideas and some initiative to try to again stick as much as we can to the subject, but in this case we had an opportunity to kind of add something special for the client. So in the right left hand picture there, you can kind of see this house off in the background, and you can kind of see it behind the tree on the right one there. But that's actually the Marshall House. If you ever get to see it in person, I tried to bring out some of the details of the facade of the Marshall House, and we put it on the hillside there, which was great. But you can see the layers in the background on where I started with kind of the medium green color, and then on to the right there, you can see how that's built up. We added a couple of trees, and ultimately that's not the completed product, but it's very, very close to it. So I think we really did capture the essence, I would say, of this mural and had a lot of fun getting to incorporate some personal imagery special to that home, and now also special to this mural. So I think the story was great, and I was really, really excited to be able to be a part of it. Great clients and a great contractor that I worked with. So on these projects, when it's all said and done, I think everybody was very happy to have this opportunity to really kind of restore a piece that makes a huge difference, I think, in the home. And it's a beautiful home, and now it's a beautiful space that really, I think, means a lot and is very special. So, all right. Well, so moving on, that was the Marshall House and some of the projects I did there. And I've worked on some other, several historic projects. I don't always have a bunch of documentation as far as some of the smaller ones, but I do have some later on, some imagery that I can show you. But I also have worked. I restored, helped restore the LA Black building in DeWitt. It's an administrative building for the rice industry that was built in the 1940s. Worked for a commercial contractor on that one, where we went in and stripped and sanded the wood. It was all clad in wood on the interior. So did some restoration on all the wood trim and wood cabinetry, and spent some time and some love to try to get that thing back looking good, and it turned out great, and it's wonderful. It's been some years. So and throughout my career, there's been some just wonderful historic homes that I've had a chance to do one thing or another in. It could be a repair work, it could be just something special, but it's always been a lot of fun. So yeah, moving on to my workspace here. I do have a studio in North Little Rock off East Washington there. It's quite a large studio. So at the studio, I get to work on, again, furniture. People will bring. I do a lot of furniture. I don't have a lot of pictures of all the furniture, but I do a lot of furniture. That's kind of my bread and butter, kind of sort of sometimes, because there are so many opportunities to restore and or to paint or to repair furniture that means something to people, or they just want something, very, special. So I do take furniture and get to do any of my sculptures or art pieces at the studio. The first two pictures up there that was my basement. That was my first studio. And then I've had a couple other studios since then, but the East Washington one is my latest studio, which is a lot larger. But as you can see, I have a variety of paints hanging out. I've tool shelves, and try to just be ready for anything. Because in this world, I think, anything can happen, or there could be any type of request. So try to have a lot of materials on hand if I can to work with, and that I'm familiar with as well, to help out with these projects. But my workplace includes up on a roof, so that the picture of that chimney there, that's actually from faux stone I was working on a remodel, a house. I mean, that's about 60 feet up, and so luckily the contractor built up scaffolding for me so I could do the project. But in this case, they built a chimney and they wanted it, to look like the rest of the house. Unfortunately, they could not find the same rock, and they could not put the rock on the chimney because it was just too heavy, and they didn't build it for that. So luckily, I was there hanging around doing some other things, and they asked me if I could help out with this, and I said it'd be my pleasure. So sometimes I'm up on a roof, 60 feet up on some somewhat suspect scaffolding, but it worked out just fine. I had my harness and I had some safety equipment so I could keep myself safe. And then, I get to work in the studio on all kinds of pieces. That's a bed frame there. That's a large door, which is one of two that I needed some pretty big space to work on, which that medallion in the middle, that's a custom medallion that we worked on and got installed. That went out of state to Alabama. Both of those, two of those doors. There in the middle there with the paintbrush and the blue, that's about 70 feet up in the air. That's actually off of Cantrell. I'm on a lift painting a big eagle on the Arkansas Federal Credit Union corporate office. So I get to work at all types of different locations and places. Sometimes at
We lost you there for a second, Eric. Let's
Lost his sound, it looks
we
like.
lost the sound. Okay.
There he goes.
Great. Oh, you lost the sound?
Yes, yes.
Oh, how long?
Just for a minute. Just for a minute. You were talking about the credit union project, the Eagle.
Yeah, right. So that was on a lift over off Cantrell there, Highway 10, 70 feet up in the air. So lucky to be able to get to have all these different locations and places I get to work in. Sometimes they're at a personal home, or sometimes at a commercial site, and sometimes they're in the air, and sometimes they're in a basement. But it's a lot of fun, and it keeps things interesting, and it keeps me in shape. There's certainly some physical requirements to do what I do with some of these projects. So it's a lot of fun to get to do what I do, which is all types of different decorative finishes and repairs and artwork. So move on here. All right, so this is some commercial installations. As I mentioned, I get to work commercially and residentially. This is a gym that we did also off of Highway 10. I had a helper with me on this one. So this was a big, large wall that they knew they wanted to use wood on. And so they delivered, the contractor delivered, I don't know, 50 large planks of this tongue and groove wood. And so we created the finish on all that wood, different colors and different styles of finishing on the wood. And then, went on there and laid out the kind of the pattern that I wanted, which is a very randomized pattern, which I don't know. I just really wanted to see it in person. I drew it on paper and did some renderings, but we never really got a chance to build it. So this was our opportunity to do it. Lots of angles, lots of cuts, lots of work, but it's a lot of fun, again, because I think in the end it's a unique piece that is rewarding for all of us. The big piece over there is another commercial installation. It's on a ceiling in a local restaurant. That's in that it was a barreled ceiling, so with this big kind of support beam thing kind of going through it. So the request was, can you make it look like a cave? And so again, with some help, went in there and we did application of using plasters and different foams, and obviously color and stains to kind of recreate a cave ceiling, which was a lot of fun too. So some of the techniques I use is trompe l'oeil, so kind of using shadows and repetition to do that. These are just both just residences. Both of them are on ceilings, of course. So kind of this fabric look on the left there, and then the tile look on the right. And yeah, I get to do faux finishes. I mean, it's pretty much one of my big specialties, and that, it includes so much faux finishing or faux painting. But ultimately, faux painting, faux finishing is, the use of these materials to recreate, marble or stone or wood, or for that matter, in this case, that Vinahood is, we attempted to do like a hammered copper look, but that's just using plasters and paints and stains to make that look right there. The middle photo is an example of some wood graining in some of the current color palettes that some of the designers are using right now. And then the one on the left there is it's a combination of both. It's Venetian plaster, but then also I went in and created some veining to recreate more of the marble look that was in the space. So faux finishing is a big part of what I do. Again, there's that ceiling with the cave-like ceiling, some of it during the process, and then one that's a little bit closer to completed space. And then so faux wood as well. This is a large ceiling way up. I mean, so that's a 30 or 30 or so feet up in the air. And so a lot of the times the clients, not to say that this project used inferior materials by any means. They had some very, very, very nice materials, but in this case, they really didn't want to bring in the full beams for this particular ceiling. It's a pretty large ceiling, so we had them frame it up, and so that's a combination of just some MDF and some drywall framed in with some trim. And then I came in and obviously did a kind of a faux wood, aged faux wood finish to it, which turned out great. Turned out great. So yeah, so signage, as I just mentioned earlier, I was up, on that lift painting some eagles for the bank, the Arkansas Federal Credit Union, not too long ago, and luckily I have a few more that they've contracted me to do once they build the banks. They're going to be out on location throughout the state. I guess last year, the year before, I did some signage I donated some signage for painting for the Christmas, I guess it was some kind of Christmas production downtown in Little Rock for the lighting, the tree lighting, right? So yeah, I grew up doing art and loved, and one of the things I did practice a lot for some reason when I was very young was just looking at text and words and script, and then trying to kind of replicate that in some way, or form or fashion, and then learned how to scale things to get it to where it's accurate. It's just bigger, So I love doing big work. I like having a large space to work on, and I'll get into some of the murals that I do, or some of the murals that I've done here shortly. But learning how to scale things to either shrink them or to enlarge them has been a really important part of my career. Especially when it comes to signage or something that, if there's an inspiration image or pattern for that matter, work with patterns a lot. And so I can adjust those patterns to scale them up or scale them down depending on the need. So signage and patterns are really something that, got a lot of hours in and an experience and enjoy doing too. I think it's neat to kind of bring back some of the old school hand painting stuff. Because today I think we've got a lot of vinyl and computers that do it these days, which is fine. But in some applications, just good old hand painting is probably the best way to go, in my opinion. So I certainly will offer it up if they're interested. All right. So let's see here. All right. So murals, I mentioned murals. I've been doing it. That's young me right there in the middle. But they come in all kinds of different sizes, and they're in all different places. And I've been doing different styles and different types of murals throughout my entire career. That was some of the very first things that I got involved in before I really started to do it professionally. Just painting things for the school, big murals, or a friend would want something in their room, and so I'd paint, whatever I could, whatever they wanted. And so murals has been a big part as well of my career, different styles. So again, these are very just personalized murals for clients, in their personal homes, and hopefully these always again turned out the way that they were hopefully envisioning them to. Again, I have to kind of work off of get into my client's mind, and hopefully I'm always seeing what they're seeing is kind of what I tell them. I was like, I really just want to see what you see. So, communicate with me as much as you like, so we can make sure that we're putting out the product that you want, or the vision that you really had. This is a dentist office. The dentist really wanted to have something for his patients to look at while they're staring at the ceiling while he's digging their root canal out or whatever. So it was a lot of fun. I said, yeah, great. Let's do some sky scenes. And he gave me just gives me some artistic freedom. This is just one of them. We did a couple of rooms, and maybe we'll do some more later on. Again, some older mural work that I did. I was fairly young. It was probably about 15 years ago. But yeah, this is a personal home dining area. They had some inspiration images. And so, and on these murals, again, it's a combination. A lot of times I do like to just work with acrylics, mainly because, at least as a base, because they do dry quickly. I can still work with them though, wet on wet, and kind of create a little bit of that blending, wet on wet blending. But try to learn how to use them in both ways. And then, sometimes I'll start with the acrylic and then finish it up with an oil glaze of some sort to kind of create some more depth and shadows. So really, mixed media is generally most pieces that I work on. They're a mixture of different types of media. This was a lot of fun. A designer hired me to kind of recreate on the wall what was in these little canvases down there. There's actually 4 small canvases that are in the middle of that big splotch of color there. And so again, trying to use and stick with some of the spirit of the canvases, I expanded that out to the walls, and I think it blends pretty good. So, and again, that's all custom blending of colors just on site. The one on the right is just a fun one for my cousin that commissioned us to do it. She really wanted this image, and so recreated it for her. Done some murals in the past, Homers. These are some fun ones. Again, all kinds of different types of media. This is one kind of in process there, and it was a dome above a chandelier. Again, had some inspiration pictures to work off of. So let me go back. Yeah, and here are a collection of 5 that were in another bank. It's a different credit union, but that one is probably over 10 years ago too. But they wanted something special and local represented in their bank, and so we took the space they had on their walls, and I believe these are like 6 by 7 or 5 by 7 murals of just local spots in Little Rock in Arkansas. Yeah. So again, I work with epoxies as well. So this is a fun one. They really didn't want to bust up their hardwood, but they really didn't want their hardwood anymore. So I worked with the designer on this one as well. So I said, well, we can paint whatever we want to on the floor, and then I can put an epoxy over top of it, and then we can have kind of a unique floor. And so that's what you're looking at here is ultimately a painted hardwood floor, and then with a clear epoxy over it. But we chose a design and executed it hopefully as perfectly as we could. So epoxies are kind of big now, so I just try to stay on the up and up with them and use them when they're necessary. They are fun but can be tricky to work with sometimes. So and like a lot of these products too. So yeah. Another thing we offer stenciling, lots and lots of stenciling over the years as well. This is just a custom pattern that the client and I sat down together, and she had some fabric, I think, that had something like this on there. So again, I took this smaller kind of pattern that she liked and scaled it up to the room to the size that we wanted, and then just custom cut the stencil myself. So I create the stencils, and then there is some hand piping and there's some hand work as well. So it's again some combinations of stenciling and hand painting. Some more stenciling. Client wanted a cool thing on their chairs, and so I custom cut. And this particular stencil, because it was on fabric, I used an adhesive back, kind of like contact paper to make the stencil, and so I could get a really good clean line and a good stick to the fabric because of the texture, and then some of the arcing in it. So that worked out really well. Again, so that's an example of just custom cutting a stencil. This is a large stencil that I have to just make it, and so I get in there with my vellum or whatever. I think in this case I just had to do some large laminated paper and then just custom it that way. All right, and this is an example of striae. So this is a project up in Fayetteville I did. This is a theater room, and so in this case, it's tone on tone. Those are actually the same color. One's in flat and one's in high gloss, and so I use that to kind of give us that separation and some of that depth. But again, on this particular case, I just custom made the tool to create this striated pattern. It was a squeegee with a lot of little little nicks in it, and I just had to make sure I did it pretty straight, as straight as I could, to create this striade look. Yeah, and then hand painting and stenciling, again, it's a combination of both. Do a lot of hand painting on walls, which, in some cases you could consider as murals, but there's a lot of times where it is a patternized. So, sometimes it's to recreate like a wallpaper look as well. Yeah, hand painting, stenciling is something we do a lot. And then, custom art. This is just one of quite a few pieces. The designer asked for a piece using guitar picks, and so, well, ordered a bunch of guitar picks and made a guitar out of them. And so they were all actually embedded into the wood and glued in to create this piece, which was a lot of fun to do. It was for a younger guy that was interested in guitars and playing music. So yeah, so this is kind of goes into some of the historic historic projects. This is a house that doing a big remodel on, and really the client wanted to keep the original marble that was surrounded, the hearth piece there, and then surrounding the fireplace that they had. Unfortunately, there were some issues, so once they started remodeling, if you see down there to the left, there was a bad transition, and so that slab was a little thin, and so when they started uncovering some things, we exposed some of the understructure of it, and it was really kind of just a messy kind of look. So, the option was initially that the trim guy was just going to come in and put wood trim around the entire hearth to hide all that, but luckily the contractor knew me and decided to give me a shout to see if I could help out with getting that repaired. And I think it turned out really well. Again, not too hard of a fix, but I did have to use some modern materials. I used Bondo in this case to kind of really fill and refine that edge. It's a fast setting kind of filler that I could work with. And again, some of these projects, it's more of, we're saving everything we can. We just need to get a few things kind of touched up. And in this case, that's what it was. Just that edge really needed some help. And yeah, got to recreate it, and it's a no issue anymore, which is a lot of fun too. You just, passes the test on those. So yeah, and canvas work as well. These are all custom pieces. The frames actually on the left there was also custom built for that piece. Canvas, again, what I do is I'm pretty much contracted. So, ultimately a designer and or client owner will just have a request that they need a piece right here and on this wall, and it needs to be, this size, or I'd like it to be this size. And so I can, will custom make custom build a canvas for them for their size that they need, unless there are some that are already available in that size. And really, again, just try to stay open. So I've made some really large canvases, and I've made even curved canvases to fit arched walls or arched walls. And so there's really, it's hard for me to say no to a lot of these projects, because again, they're challenging and they're fun for me. Sculpting, and carving. So I use a variety of different materials to do sculpting and carving. And ultimately, it ties in with some of this restoration too, because historic restoration, because again, things get broken off or chipped or there's a piece missing, and it's not possible to just get a brand new one, and it's not really something that is easy just to kind of polish over or whatever. So it needs some fillers. It needs to be resculpted. In this case, with the imagery right here, was a commission piece for a church. I did some pieces. These are actually exterior pieces that are installed really high up on a steeple. And so hurricane code or whatever, some of the code, it was going to be too difficult to actually get these made in precast. So we decided to do a foam core, this is just a carving foam that I'd use, sculpting foam. And then, I cover it with fiber tape, and then covered that with an exterior grade cement mortar that they use for the rest of the building. So that gives us some exterior protection. It still was lightweight, so installation was fairly easy. And we got a really cool decorative piece for the exterior of this church. And of course, whenever you're stuck at home in the snow, I'll, if there's enough snow, hey, get out there and play in it. And so sculpting snow or just making things out of whatever, or something that it's just what I do. I get bored sometimes. I feel like I need to do something. And this is one of the pieces we did in 2020. I did at the house just in 2020. We were snowed in and got a lot of snow. So I had to wait for the right time so I could sculpt, but it turned out great. So that was a lot of fun. I think that got passed around a little bit to hopefully brighten people's day. Yeah. All right. So this is the wreath again for the church, that same church. In this case, I did this piece, and then they actually, because it was lower on the building, they were remolded and then cast and precast in concrete. So this is just basically the mold for they had, I don't know, 6 of these wreaths that went around the portal windows. And so, yeah, I was responsible for carving these new wreaths. And so where it comes in handy too, the architect and the builder, the contractor was ultimately who got in touch with me about this. They're adding a new building. They wanted the same look on this new building that they have on the larger building, but these windows, these portal windows, were architecturally put in and made smaller. But you can't go out to the store and buy a new, a wreath for that exact size. So the contractor asked me for ideas, and I said, well, I don't know. I mean, you can go in and try to 3D scan it and see if somebody can do it that way and size it. I said, but ultimately, if I'm going to do it, I'm just going to just hand carve you something new. And he's like, well, how are you going to do that? And I said, well, that's my job. So thankfully, everything worked out, and everything was installed. And I think the project ultimately was a success. So again, a lot of fun. And, again, that can work for a lot of different applications, that approach and technique. So I had to take a picture of this and show you. So, all right, so that's my watch, obviously. So I wanted to put that up because what these projects entail sometimes is serious work. It's serious work. So that's one day of working, doing Venetian plaster in Fayetteville. I had a kind of a deadline I had to meet. And again, I was saying that Venetian plaster is one of the more labor intensive finishes that I do. And so, yeah, I wanted to kind of show you how intense that can get. That's, that's almost a marathon, I guess, or something like that, worth of work in a day. And that can kind of continue through the whole week. So, it can get pretty wild. So it takes a lot of mind power and muscle power sometimes to get through these projects. All right. Well, I think that's the conclusion of that's all I have for my slideshow. I'm going to stop the share there. All right, great. Yeah, so at this stage, I've kind of laid out all the different things that we do at Finality. There are several, I say all of the things, there are several projects that I could mention, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole trying to get these images put together because they're, luckily I've got about 40,000 hours logged projects. And so throughout the 20 years of my career, I've been just very fortunate to stay busy and to stay working. Got it. As an artist, I wanted to stay busy. I wanted to make sure I was producing something, that people wanted. And so getting involved with builders and contractors and designers kind of allowed me to keep my schedule full, because I get to work with multiple different people that are busy, and they have their needs as well. And so, I could go on and on and on and on about all the different things that I've done and how much I've enjoyed it and all the great clients that I've had and all the things that I've learned throughout these years. But I'll kind of wrap it up kind of for now, I suppose. And yeah, open it up to any questions if we have any.
Well, I think this has just been incredible. And one thing I'm going to mention before I get into a couple questions that I have is that we did have Justin Elbert actually as our presenter last month. So it was great that you brought him up because
Yeah.
he spoke on what to look for if you're buying an old house or it could be an old property, and just kind of like nuts and bolts of if you're looking at something, these are the things I would have in his mental. For him it's a mental checklist, but definitely have a checklist. So I appreciate that you shared your collaboration with him. So I have a couple of questions for you.
Sure.
So one of them you answered because it was the striae. I didn't know what that was, so that was interesting. So it's basically, it does have texture. It sounds like from what you were saying, it does have some
Yeah, I
texture
think
to
it
it.
included, yeah, included in this case a light texture, but it did indeed have texture. And, in this case, I used a combination again of flat and gloss to kind of help with
Gotcha.
the intensity of the pattern of the striae. I think there are different methods. A lot of times you can just have a striae brush, it could be a brushed effect. In this case, we really wanted a kind of a bold look. And so collaborated with the designer on it and did some samples and ultimately wound up with that particular finish. Yeah.
Well, it's quite striking. Um, One of the things that we've been working on with a friend of ours, Marshall Ray, I don't know if you know him. He was one of our speakers early or late last year, I think, really, was talking about training. Because one of the things that we feel is that there are challenges to finding people who will go into the trades. And so I'm curious, and I know that you mentioned, working with a team of folks that, on these projects you're doing. How do you how do you learn a new skill? Is it through apprenticing or learning on the job, or do you just try it until it works? And, that next generation, how are you kind of mentoring them to fill a gap that's going to happen? Eventually, obviously, you're still working a robust work schedule, but what happens to our next generation? Because we know very well there are people who don't plaster. I would say you're probably one of few people who will do Venetian plaster, certainly in this area. But how do we keep that going?
That's a great question, and I'm kind of faced with that a lot because, well, to start, as far as how I learned, I was fortunate enough, again, to kind of have a background in art. I was just, I don't, born with it, I guess.
Yeah.
That's just what I
Yeah.
just really just got into at a very young age. And so, it started very young for me to, wanting to try to understand and trying to already refine some of the skills that I was, just trying out. And yes, I've had, great instructors as well. But then, I have to, matured over the years. So a lot of it was just putting in the time, and playing with new products and just to see their limits and see how I could maybe apply them on, on different projects. So I think that's the first part as far as, the next generation. Hopefully they have that same kind of innate kind of just desire to want to create something that, or be a part of something that, may take some hard work, but, through dedication and putting some time in, we can get to that point to where you're very proficient at it, accurate at what they're doing so they can become efficient enough to possibly do it as, for a living.
Right.
But training, it's tough, when trying to train somebody. And right now I'm pretty much solo artist. And this project, I'm in Dallas right now working on a large project. So I did need to bring someone to assist me with this project, or I'd just be here, I'd wear myself out. So luckily over the years, I have had the opportunity to work with individuals throughout the years. And initially, it's the same as anybody, I guess. If they have no idea what they're doing, it's just a matter of, okay, let me stand right next to you,
Mm-hmm.
tell you as much as I can about the product you're about to use, talk about the tools we're using, and then literally almost hold their hand, to try to
Right.
make sure that we're applying it the way we need to, and they understand the overall final product that we're, trying to achieve. The funny thing about a lot of industries, I think too, I can train almost anybody to work, to know how to work with the products that I use and the materials that I use and even the techniques that I use. I think what really sets though most or me apart, or at least this company, and what sets uh, uh, anybody that wants to try to make this as a career, is that they really need to love it. They really need to
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that they, once they've committed to a project, it's you go all the way, and it may be the hardest thing you've ever done to try to get to that point, but
Right.
not to give up with it. And if there are mistakes, or if there is an issue, try to figure out how to overcome it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the products and the techniques, I've taught to people, and and they've gone on and to go do it themselves for their own benefits in their business, which is fine, which is just the way it is sometimes. So, but it does cost me time and money to train people most of the time if they're working for me. Depending on the situation, I'll have to bring in somebody. And luckily, again, I have some people I can depend on that have worked with me for several years, but I don't necessarily keep them full time. Now, with that being said, I think if it's the right person, and I would love to see a young person, or have a young person that was interested in doing what I do, and I think would be happy to intern them. It is difficult sometimes in my head to kind of wrap it around, because I am so focused on, well, I've got to go do this. This is my project, and I've got time scales and time frames I need to work within, and I have my own budgets that I have to work within
Right.
as well. So
Right.
it's tricky, but ideally, there is some type of astonishment by some of the young people that they may want to get interested in trying to learn a little bit more. I do get a lot of on the job interest. If I'm on a job site, people are watching
Mm-hmm.
me do it. Oh, how do you do that? And they want to kind of know. And I'm like, I'll tell them, everything I'm doing. But again, I'm like, you're going to have to probably put some hours in, and it's going to be maybe a little tough, because
Right. Right.
that's, yeah,
I mean, it takes skill. I mean, it takes
yeah,
skill and like you said, repetition and practice.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
One question that someone sent me was supply chain issues. Are you running into supply chain issues that a lot of, um, the home building industry or construction industry is running into? Have you encountered problems in that
Well,
arena?
luckily for me, most of my projects are manageable enough to where my supplies, I don't need large quantities of them normally. So, with that being said, there were a couple of instances where there were some products that I normally use and familiar with that just weren't available, but there were comparable, um, you know, materials that I could substitute, for that. So I use a lot of primer, oil-based and acrylic-based primers. And some of the ones that I really, really loved and I worked with and I could, I just was familiar and trusted, weren't available. So I did have to kind of, just shimmy around and see what was comparable, or, as best as possible for these materials. But luckily, most of my projects are manageable enough to where it didn't really affect me too bad. There was a couple of times, and still is, I still have to kind of order things ahead of time to make sure I can get them. But yeah, luckily not so bad, not so much. Yeah.
Gotcha. Shelley, did you have any questions that came in on YouTube?
No, just someone thanked Eric for his talk.
Oh,
Yes, and we had some other chats in the Zoom too. People like really were impressed with the art and everything you showed.
oh,
So this has just been wonderful. Thank you so much. It
been a
makes me feel
pleasure.
like my house is very boring, frankly. My walls are very beige.
Well,
Beige.
you have my number. You just
I
have to
know.
get you
I
on the
know.
schedule.
But like you said, there are budget constraints. So, the reality of
Well,
it. Yeah.
hey, that's, and again, that's part of it. But boy, I tell you what, hopefully that's not always, the main concern. I think again, there's a lot of things I like to do, and sometimes I just do it because I like it, not necessarily because it's a bigger ticket item or anything. But it is a business, so I have to keep that in mind, as
Right.
well. It's a lot of fun, though. Yeah, no,
No, I
anytime.
love it. I love it. It just makes me, I don't think I'm bold enough. So I appreciate that some other folks are willing to try these different techniques. And, like Ann and Jim restoring that mural, it could have been very easy to just paint over it or,
I think
cover
that
it
was
up.
the
And that's
goal.
just magnificent. It is
Oh, thank
magnificent.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think you're right. It's a collaboration with your property owners, your designers, your architects, the whole 9 yards. I think that's great. So that
No
is
doubt.
wonderful. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to share my screen again. And thank you again, Eric. And we look forward to seeing you when you're back in Arkansas. And so
I'm looking
we can
forward to
meet
getting
in person.
back.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
Awesome.
All right. So
Thank you.
I just have a couple comments. Um, First, remind everyone that we have a preservation conversation. Whoops, I'm missing my thing. Well, actually, I should bring this up first because before we have our next preservation conversation, we have the tour of homes. So the 57th tour of homes is taking place May 7th and 8th. It is in the Governor's Mansion Historic District. We still need volunteers. So if you're interested in volunteering, please go to quapaw.com. And if you're interested in getting tickets, go to quapaw.com. We would love to see you. We're really, really excited about the tour this year. And we're doing really well with our ticket sales. So I think everyone's excited about getting into many of these homes and getting back into the spring tour time. So now I will talk about our next preservation conversation. Laura Fuentes is going to present Belmont Boom, Finding North Little Rock's Entertainment Boomtown. And this is quite an interesting story about a town that was adjacent to St. Joe's Orphanage, which is no longer, there is little to no remnants of it left. And Laura did this for her master's thesis. So we are looking forward to that. And all plans are to do it in person. We couldn't obviously do our talk in person this week since Eric is out of town, but our plan is to go back to in person if we can. So we look forward to that on May the 12th. And you'll see announcements about it and where to register if you're going to come in person, or if you want to watch it virtually, that's fine as well. So once again, thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you very much, Eric. Thank you, Shelley. And we will sign off. Take care, everybody.